How can we theorize about the supernatural if we don't have a solid understanding of the natural? Welcome to Musings on Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix. Ladies and gentlemen, mystery seekers, musers, conspiracy theorists, interdimensional philosophers, seekers of truth, comparative mythology enthusiasts, and last but certainly not least, all of you that desperately cling to your confirmation bias. Whether your interest is Atlantis to Zeus, cuneiform to quantum physics, we tackle it all from our quantumly entangled castle, tucked away in the ancient flood-battered Central Pangaean mountain range. We're the one-stop shop for mystery, history, and comparative mythology. We are a podcast dedicated to exploring the ancient, mysterious, and unknown with logic and reason, and where we also theorize the geometric fourth dimension exists and is the spiritual. Only trigger warning for this episode is a logical conversation, so if applying the Socratic method on fringe topics is disturbing to you, you'll want to turn off the podcast now. This episode, we're going to talk about psychology, the long-awaited consciousness episode that we've been talking about for months now. So, our resident future psychologist, Miss Madison, is going to be taking us on a journey into each and every one of your brains.
That's Mrs. to you.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, so are we just jumping into it?
No, I got some announcements and stuff I'm going to run through. You're good. But, okay. First things first, we'll hit some announcements. Sorry, I'm not really, I'm already jumbled up here. So anyway. Okay, first things first, we have a Discord server up and running. So I've had a couple, maybe like one or two people join in. So if you are dedicated to the show and you want to be in a forum area where you can talk with other people about stuff, definitely join the Discord. There is a lot of stuff coming down the road. The more traction that we build, the more interest we see from you as the listener as to what happens with the podcast and the content creation platform. I will say I have my thinking hat on, my thinking cap. We have M-Quad caps that now exist, M-Quad hats, and I must say they came out quite nice. They are embroidered. So if you're wanting one of those in the future, definitely let us know, and I can if we have enough people that are like, yes, give me my M-Quad hat so I can join the Quad Squad, I will definitely. I had someone go through and comment Quad Squad on a bunch of reels that I did, so it's just kind of, I've just adopted it at this point.
Wait, so the same person commented Quad Squad on
like 2 or 3 of my reels that I did.
I love that.
So yeah, so we are going to refer to you followers, listeners, as the Quad Squad. But yes, if you want your M-Quad hat so you can officially represent the Quad Squad everywhere you go, let me know, and I can prioritize building up a merch store. Otherwise, it'll fall to the wayside and kind of wait until we have a big enough following. I think it's worthwhile. A website also exists, mquadmusings.com. I've been working on it. There's not much there yet, but if there's anything you're wanting to see have resource-wise available to you as the listener, let me know. Shoot me an email, and I can work on incorporating that into the website. This is, again, we want this to be an interactive show and content creation platform. This is about a collection of people seeking truth, not just, me having every single answer and throwing things your way on the podcast.
Newsflash, we don't have every single answer.
We don't have any answers, actually.
We have speculation.
We're so wrong that we're actually right.
We need that on a shirt.
Yes, shirts can also be a thing, but again, it's off of how interested are people in these things.
Yes.
So if you're interested and you're like, yes, I want a shirt that says you're educated in your wrongness and to wear my Quad Squad M-Quad hat, let me know, and then I'll prioritize a merch store over other stuff. I will tease, I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm putting together I'm not going to say too much on this. I want to leave it pretty vague for now because I don't know how it's going to pan out. But I am attempting to I have put together a team, and we are planning to attempt to decipher an undeciphered by academics cuneiform tablet. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get resources from the owner of the tablet, and it has so far been unfruitful. But I am hoping to make some contact in the coming weeks. So I will tease that. I'm not going to say any more for now. but a lot of research will be involved. And so I am sifting through a lot of stuff. But yeah, anyway, I did mention the Matrix Codex on the last episode, but that is something I'm working through as well. It is very dense and takes a lot of time and effort. So definitely, yeah, just let me know you're interested in these things, and then I can prioritize these for you as the listener. And like, if I have like 100 people that are like, yes, I would become a member for like $3 to $5 a month to get access to your Matrix Codex as you're building it, I can prioritize that stuff. Speaking of memberships, I do also have the idea of doing instant recording access, ad-free episodes as well for our episode releases. But again, this is a special platform I have to set up, and so I need enough people interested in that to kick it off. And I will say this is actually the official, not the day the episode releases, but we're recording this on the 12th. The first MQuad episode released on the 13th of last year. On
That's
May.
cool.
So we are officially, this is episode 53, we are officially at the 1 year point because we kind of bounced around and switched release days, so it kind of got a little wonky there with the official numbers. But episode 53 here is the 1 year anniversary of MQuad.
And
so,
I get to lead it.
yes,
I
and it's
feel so special.
your episode to lead the official 1 year anniversary.
I'm going to butcher this, hopefully.
Nah,
not.
you'll be fine. But yeah, so I mean, ultimately what we're going to do here is we're going to talk, Miss Madison is going to share a lot of theories of
Mrs.
Oh my goodness. Her Majesty the Queen, Lady Madison, is going to share with us a number of theories on the consciousness. And how we're going to do this here, she's going to describe a bunch of theories for us, and we're going to play with how these might integrate into the fourth dimension. But the intent here is I've actually got you lined up for 3 episodes, this one included, on more of the science of psychology. I have a guest coming on that's going to talk to us about sleep paralysis and out of body experiences. I made a connection with someone that has experience with the occult and astral projection. And then I also have someone that is a PhD and has a lot of experience in spiritual warfare stuff from a Christian perspective. So we're going to lay like 3 episodes worth of groundwork talking about the science of human psychology and consciousness and how a lot of these things fit together, but it is leading somewhere. So we are deviating a little bit from our usual to focus more on a science grounded perspective because, as I said in the cold open, you can't really understand the paranormal if you don't have a solid grasping on just what's normal. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do here is explore all of this.
I do want to say, you mentioned astral projection and like altered states almost. And, you know, today is going to be about consciousness. So like that applies, but I'm not going to cover that today.
Yes, this is just more focused on...
I will cover that at a later time.
Yeah, this is more focused on science. We're not going to go down every rabbit hole. We'll play with some fourth dimensional ideas, but this is just more to educate you as the listener so you can have this to refer back to when we have our other guests on and we go down other rabbit holes. And hopefully this invites listener feedback that we can build up more of a theory-based and scientific understanding for before and when we have these guests on, so we have even better questions to ask. So don't hesitate to feel that as the listener and email us at m.quad.musings@gmail.com. I've been ranting for almost 9 minutes, so it's time for you to officially start and lead the episode here.
All right. I'm going to ask you, actually, what do you think consciousness is? Before I start.
Oh boy, so this is how you guys always feel when I say something smart.
Say something smart.
Well, I mean, I've always kind of been partial to the quantum consciousness theory, which I'm going to talk about at the end because you asked me to do that one.
Yeah.
But I mean, consciousness is just kind of the awareness, I think, of, and this is my thoughts on the fly. She didn't tell me she was going to ask me this, so I could be wrong on this.
Now you know how it feels.
So forgive me, listeners. But this is... It's kind of like a specific state where you're able to be aware and have cognition and intuition thinking with you, and awareness of your immediate surroundings and reality. So that would kind of be how I would kick off my guess as to what consciousness is. Go ahead and correct it.
No, you're actually pretty spot on. I'm not going to correct that. So the basic definition, the most basic form is just awareness. So our ability to experience, think, remember, and feel, and just being cognizant of ourselves and the world around us.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on. It's almost like part of my degree was psychology or something.
Almost.
Imagine that.
But So for consciousness, the two main problems that philosophers and scientists try to figure out are how does the brain, or how do brain processes lead to perception, memory, or behavior? And then the second one is, why can physical processes be accompanied by experience? So they still haven't solved it.
It's understandable why they still haven't solved it. And we don't have a working theory for consciousness, because it's like the René Descartes, I think, therefore I am. This is the next level to that. It's like, well, why am you?
All right, Yoda. All right. So I'm going to actually go over a personal example and relate it to this, and just how the brain works, and then we're going to get into theories. So my example is, years ago, I was actually bitten in the mouth by a dog, and I swear, I didn't provoke him. And I had a puncture wound on the lower lip, and then my upper lip was split pretty badly. So I went to urgent care and then was referred to the ER for stitches, because the doctor at urgent care was like too scared to do the stitches. He didn't want to mess up my lip. So I ended up struggling to speak and eat for a while after, but now you wouldn't even be able to tell that I had all of that done, except for the small scar on my lip line. And then, now I have full nerve functioning. But so connecting this to consciousness, when this happened, the pain receptors in my skin, the nociceptors, they sent signals to the somatosensory cortex of the brain, the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC, and the insula. So all of these help identify where the pain is, the intensity of it, and how unpleasant it feels. The ACC is especially tied to the emotional aspect of pain, while the insula integrates bodily sensations with emotional awareness. So while I felt the physical pain, I also felt emotions like anxiety and distress. So the hippocampus and the amygdala also stored the memory of the dog bite, and that affected how I felt about dogs for a while. Like I felt uncomfortable being around the same dog for a little bit because of that.
Well, yeah, 'cause the amygdala is where a lot of trauma usually gets stored, right? Because that's kind of like the emotional seat.
That's your fight or flight.
Yeah, okay.
And then the hippocampus works with the amygdala to store that response for future reference. That's how you form a fear.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I didn't just feel the pain, I knew I was in pain. And I emotionally responded to that experience. I didn't just react. I made conscious decisions like going to urgent care, the ER. So that all required self-awareness, evaluating risk, weighing options, and projecting future outcomes. Like I was so nervous that my eating and speaking was going to be messed up for life.
So a lot of thoughts that happen really fast in the human brain that we don't even recognize, that are just really automatic. The subconscious is very powerful in comparison to the actual conscious, but both play together and have their roles in just day-to-day life functioning.
Yes, absolutely. And so this whole example and the process that like all of the processes my brain went through, this goes back to the question of how and why physical processes connect to an inner psychological experience. Like, how is it even possible?
We'll let you stew on that question for a minute, because we're actually almost at 15 minutes already here. So we're going to take a brief ad pause.
That was such good timing.
Yeah, that was a great question. Great question to end on. So
I'm killing it.
Yeah, you are. Stay tuned, and we will return in just a moment to do the best we can here on Musings on Mysteries in the Mythical Matrix, to ask the questions of consciousness that plague your mind. And we are so glad you've not drifted off into sleep, into a state of unconsciousness here at Musings and Mysteries in the Mythical Matrix. We're so glad that you are still here with us, or maybe you're not. Maybe you're snoozing in front of the TV or listening to your phone or at your computer at work. I hope you're not sleeping at work, but
unless you get paid to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, that would be pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. But all right, so we are back. Go ahead and talk to us more about consciousness.
Well, actually, we're at the theory portion already.
Heck yeah.
So, I mean, that was my example. So that kind of set us up for the basic understanding of the processes, the physical processes that happen. So there is a lot of theories that go into this. A lot of people have been very like open-minded about it. Some people are like, no, it's this. So there's one that's like kind of funny sounding. So you're going to get a kick out of it.
Oh boy.
But the first one, so there's two major, I guess I'll call them theories. Two major theories, dualism and materialism. Those are the two like overarching themes. So dualism is the belief that consciousness is separate from the physical brain entirely, where consciousness is made of something immaterial. Within this stance, there are two sub-theories. So substance dualism describes how the mind and body influence each other, or interactionism. Property dualism takes the stance that while the body can influence the mind cannot influence the body.
I would instantly disagree with that second one. I'd be more, I think I'm more in the first camp. What did you say that one was called again? Because I'm getting lost in terms here.
The second one?
The first one.
So substance dualism.
Yeah.
Where they're both interacting each other, they both influence each other. And then property dualism is where the body can influence the mind cannot influence the body.
Yeah, so I don't agree with the second one personally. I would be
Why?
more in the first camp. Because I think that the mind can influence the body, and your psychological state and your perspective on things affects whether you can or can't do certain things. Your belief system predicts your outcome. If you believe you can't do something, then you're not going to be able to do it. And I mean, some of this circles back to a Christian roots of, how much Jesus emphasizes faith, and you get healed in, from God, from Jesus, from a Christian perspective, in accordance with your faith. And so there is that aspect where your mind is able to affect your body. And I think, this rings true for anyone that's done stuff hard, like ice plunges, doing really long hikes in like mountains where your body just wants to quit and you have to keep going. I've been in both situations, and you have to put yourself in a mental state to just keep going. And my mind can affect the body, and I've played mental games with myself to keep myself walking when I just wanted to sit down and be done for the day.
Yes.
on like hikes. So I think that the mind and consciousness strongly affects what you're able to do. So that would be my theory. Can you say which one that was one more time? Which one was the first one?
It's dualism, but then the two sub-theories under dualism: substance dualism and property dualism.
Yeah, so I'd be substance dualism.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the other one's materialism. So
yeah.
I kind of think I know where this is going, but
yes. But do you want to talk about the fourth dimension with dualism first, or?
I mean, if you have an integration thing in your script, sure, it's your episode that you're running. So.
Well, yeah, it kind of is. So looking through the lens of the fourth dimension, the mind. This is for dualism. The mind could exist in a dimension beyond the material realm. So the idea that consciousness might not just be a product of the physical brain in our three-dimensional world, but could transcend from another dimension. So some versions of dualism could be interpreted as proposing the mind as a fourth-dimensional entity that exists outside the spatial temporal limits of our three-dimensional perception.
I love that, because that's the core of M Quad right there. It's something out of our three dimensions that exists in essence almost.
Yeah. And then I also put the main question would be, how can a non-material mind or thing even interact with a physical body? That's the main question, the main point that they have not figured out when looking at dualism and then connecting that to the fourth dimension.
Right. And I mean, we've kind of like, for lack of better words, flirted with a lot of these concepts on the show. We've played around with a lot of these ideas vaguely, but never in such direct messaging and wording. The way because I was kind of thinking about this too, and how my opinions were, and I can say this for the end unless you are good with me doing it now. Like my opinions on how this fits.
Yeah.
The way I see it is that we have like our spirit is fourth dimensional, but it's not complete in the fourth dimension. So that we have like an essence of us that exists in the fourth dimension, but not a completed essence. Angels have a completed essence because they have a body that exists in the fourth dimension. We don't have bodies that exist in the fourth dimension. Only our spirit exists in the fourth dimension. And again, this is my conjecture. This isn't like, I have scientific equivocal proof for this, because as you're about to hear, there's not really a lot of good consensus on this. It rings more true for the opinions are like buttholes. Everyone has one, but not everyone needs to hear yours. But there's a lot of good theories out there. I'm not dissing them. It's more of a joke.
I do want to add on that too. That's a good point though, because I that immediately made me think of as soon as a baby, like I guess as soon as an egg is fertilized or whatever, and there's like that flash of light.
Yeah.
And like there's a theory that that's actually a soul. Like the flash of light is a soul.
Yeah.
So there is if that's true, there is some physical aspect to a soul.
Right. And you look at Genesis 1, what's the first thing that God creates? He creates light, because you already have the Mayim that exists, and there's a lot of semantics you could get into there. But the first thing he creates on day one is light and then time.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I see the spiritual as kind of like a plug-in conduit. So it's like an outlet almost, where like the human body is like the outlet, and then the spirit is like the plug for like a nightlight or whatever you want to kind of envision it to be, where it's kind of useless, disconnected, but connected, it has a lot of power. And that's why like you see things like the Nephilim and like the spirits of the Nephilim, seeking out to have a body, and you have all these things where you're able to detach and exist in. So like, this, like the near-death experiences where people have out-of-body experiences, which we'll talk about a lot more in future episodes here.
Yeah.
But this idea to me speaks of you're able to almost, you're existing in another dimension where people are not able to perceive your spirit. It's not like you're invisible. It's not like you're not there if this is true, if this stuff really happens. But you're able to be outside of yourself and experience things in a way that no one else is able to visualize or see you, like you're in another dimension, almost another dimension you can't fully comprehend.
It also kind of reminds me of aura, like people claiming that they could read people's auras and like the, you know what I mean, like the energy and the energy around them and everything. That kind of reminds me of that.
Supposedly, I don't know how true this is because it's Instagram tier news, but supposedly I've seen some stuff from like people that are more into like quantum healing. So again, that like take it with a grain of salt. But supposedly there's something to like your electromagnetic field of your heart is supposed to be able like to have like a presence out to maybe even like 10 feet or so from you, and so you can actually like feel connections of people.
It's energy based.
Yeah, and so I mean the idea of this energy and this chi, in a sense it's new agey, but in another sense like there may be some underlying truth to it, and that's what we're all about here is finding that deeper truth.
There is some validity to that. I wouldn't fully agree with it, but there is some validity because, I mean, think about it. The heart has electrical impulses. There's electricity in us. Anyways, I think we're getting a little off topic, but
that's how it goes on
it is
MQuad.
good. But that's good things, good thoughts.
There might have been some study on it that just came out actually that they were referencing. I'm not sure because I didn't really look at it that long. But anyway,
maybe you can look it up. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll kick it over back to you.
But materialism, that's the second big overarching one, overarching theory. But materialism describes consciousness as a product of physical processes, so viewing the mind and body as the same. Where the mind is fully explainable in terms of physical processes in the brain. So basically the mind is a physical unit, just like the body is.
Mm-hmm.
And it says there have been many materialist theories over the years. So every other theory that I mention after this is materialist.
Oh, okay.
But go ahead.
This is pretty much the default view of atheists. Like if you're an atheist, you are by definition materialist, which I think there is something to be said about materialism. I think that we see, like the thing is, it's kind of weird for me. Is like I would be like dualist, but I would theorize we can actually quantify it in a material sense, just not in the way that we currently have science to quantify it.
Mm-hmm.
That it's a fourth dimensional. The spirits exist in a fourth dimension. We just don't have measurements or clear, concrete understanding of how to quantify it in a dimension that we're not able to directly interact with and perceive.
Yep.
So it is material.
I would agree with that.
It is material, but to us it seems dualist because we don't have a fourth dimensional eye or perception.
Yeah, because with this, the fourth dimension would probably be viewed as another aspect of physical reality.
Right.
So that would only be understood through physics. So everything under materialism would be fundamental.
Now you know what happens. It happens to me all the time. Literally
fundamentally.
every episode for me. Welcome to the club.
Hey, M Squad. Fundamentally.
M Squad? Quad Squad. You said M Squad, didn't you?
Oh my gosh.
Now you get it. Happens to me all the time.
Listen, I've been staring at my computer like all day and my charger broke.
and you're very sleep deprived. Yeah, she was very unhappy about that.
Yeah.
All right,
Anyways,
but anyway, materialism,
so
then we can take another break.
I'm going to restart the sentence. Everything is fundamentally physical, where phenomena that is measured, observable, and subject to physical laws exist. So, therefore, consciousness is viewed as a result of physical processes in the brain and bound to physical laws. So I would agree with your atheist comment, because they're saying that everything that is measurable, observable, and subject to physical laws exists, and anything else that is not doesn't.
Yeah, now agnostic, those who don't know if there's a God or not, like you can be either. Like you can be like, I don't know. That's kind of your default. But if by definition you are atheist, you are then required by definition to be materialist. So if you're atheist and you're dualist, you're not really an atheist. I would say by definition at least. That you're kind of blurring the lines a little bit, which is not bad. It's okay to have some contradictions in your own beliefs, I think, as you're kind of exploring and figuring out how to fit it all together. So any atheist listening, I'm not attacking you.
It's okay to have contradictions, but I think it's also important to note that if you have contradictions, you should seek them out and understand them and come to a conclusion. You shouldn't just arrive at the contradiction and keep it. Yeah,
most people are just like tend to avoid contradictions, and that's like the exact mentality I push against on the whole platform here is like, hey, there are things that seem like contradictions. Let's push into it. Is it actually a contradiction? And then if not, then okay. But if so, then what do we do with that? And I do that with the Bible. I do that with Sumerian mythology. I do that with, everything in all walks of life.
Yep.
Did you have anything else you're wanting to add, or should I transition us into a break?
I am done with materialism if you want to do the break, and then we'll come back with more.
Okay. Well, we hope that you remain with us in spirit and in body, and continue allowing us to explore the inner workings of all of our minds here on Musings and Mysteries in the Mythical Matrix in pursuit of what consciousness really is. And we have returned here on Musings and Mysteries in the Mythical Matrix. We're so glad that you are in pursuit of the truth with us. Not just the Matrix or the Mythical Matrix, not just mysteries, but the truth. Because that's really what is at the core of everything here. It's not about having all of the answers, but it's about continuing to ask the right questions until the end of time.
Me now?
Yeah, that was your cue. Okay. All right, moment's over. Keep going.
I ruined it. Okay, so like I said, any other theory that I'm going to talk about from here on out is just going to be materialist. So keep the definition of materialism in mind. And then all of these are going to be sub-theories. So I'm going to really go into these a lot more than what I did with the sub-theories with dualism. All right, so the next one is global neuronal workspace theory. So this theory basically explains that the brain has a workspace made up of neurons capable of amplifying, maintaining, and broadcasting information across different brain regions. So this transforms unconscious processing into conscious awareness. So going back to my example, my dog bite becomes the focus of my attention, and the relevant sensory information gets ignited and globally shared throughout the brain. Yeah, it's important to note globally just means all around the brain, the entire brain. So the global availability is what allows you to feel and remember experiences, talk about them, and consciously reflect on what happened. So at the heart of this theory, consciousness is seen as a pattern of activity, not localized in one brain region.
So basically, it's like the circuit board in your computer with all of the electronic signals going everywhere to different regions and all communicating together at once. And that's kind of what this is, the global workspace theory. I'm not going to try to pronounce that other word.
Global neuronal workspace.
Neuronal. Yeah, I just
neuronal. You could just say GNWT.
Yeah, okay.
It's abbreviated.
Yeah, I'm just going to call it global workspace theory. But
yeah, or global theory. I mean, people are going to know what we're talking about.
So I mean, again, I don't think there's anything wrong with these materialist approach either. Even coming from a Christian, perspective, I try to be very open-minded to think about it in a lot of different ways. But even if we're coming at it from a dualist perspective, I think that this is good to explore because there is still a way that consciousness, even if it's dualist, plugs in to materialism and connects with materialism somehow. And so if we pursue this materialist connection and what we know, we might be able to tap in and identify this dualist aspect of what we don't know. Again, circling back to my cold opening at the beginning, how can you understand the supernatural or what's beyond our understanding if you don't understand the basics of what we do know? So I do think that there's some validity to this idea.
I do too.
I think it fits. I think it makes sense. I think that just being this doesn't make sense, but it's a cool theory.
So with all of these theories, I think there's some validity to most of them. I'm going to get to the one that I think is funny, and there's like no validity to it. But there's still people out there that believe it, so that's why I included it. But I think there's some validity to most of these theories, with this one being that it's all across the brain. It's not localized in one region because, like I said in my introduction in my example, so many different processes in my brain happened when I experienced that one thing, and to form feelings of the dog and everything, and all the different regions of the brain involved in just that one event. So I do think there is some validity with this one. Did you have anything to add about fourth dimension or?
I mean, not particularly. This will tie into quantum consciousness a little bit. I think quantum consciousness theory will build off of this a bit. It kind of leans on this, I think, as a framework, actually, and then expands it. So I think, because this was the one that you wanted me to talk about since I've already done it.
The quantum?
Yeah, and so I think you'll actually really like that one when I explain it.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll get to that. So next theory, what do you got?
All right. So the next one is recurrent processing theory. So unlike the global theory, recurrent processing theory focuses on the local feedback loops in the brain. So actually, particularly the visual system. So when a visual stimulus is presented, the brain engages in a feed-forward sweep that takes in basic details like color, motion, orientation, like size, stuff like that. Then the neurons in higher order visual areas begin to send feedback to earlier visual regions, creating a back and forth interaction. So these loops, and it keeps going back and forth, like it's not like a one-time thing. So these loops allow early visual areas to modulate responses based on higher level interpretations of the visual scene. So conscious perception emerges during these localized recurrent groups, even before brain-wide activity begins. even if the information is never broadcast across the brain or verbally reported. So, like talking about it, that sort of thing.
So this is more of a localized consciousness in different parts of the brain.
Yes.
Okay. And this is, I mean,
they're saying that consciousness, I'm going to say that what I'm taking away from this is that they are saying consciousness basically lies in the visual system, which I don't know if...
That's an interesting theory because most people do tie in their consciousness and where they sit into visual.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I like that spin. I think there is something interesting to that theory. But I'm just listening to all of these and I'm hearing, I'm in my mind, I'm seeing everything click together with that quantum consciousness theory. And
well, it's a good thing we're saving that for the end.
Yeah, we're saving that. This is kind of building up
it's
to it. No pun intended, because it's literally building all the pieces together, I think. And I think quantum consciousness will tie this all together quite nicely. Go ahead, keep going.
Well, what I think is interesting with this one is that conscious perception is possible without brain-wide activity. So they are agreeing with the idea that consciousness is localized.
Right. Then you got to wonder, maybe this is just me not being an expert in neuroscience, because I couldn't take one of those classes in college. It just didn't work out. I tried and I couldn't get it registered.
Yeah.
But like, you've got to wonder then, because like they'll shine the light in like people's eyes when they're like unconscious or whatever, and they've had like some kind of like trauma, to see if there's a pupil response or not. Yeah. And you do have to wonder, is that would that then be registered as a type of consciousness, since they're arguing so much of the consciousness?
Well, you just said unconscious.
Well, right. But like, unconsciousness from a general dualist perspective, but would they define that as consciousness, because there is like the eye is responding to stimuli and the eyes are like the seat of consciousness here, more or less.
The thing with that is there has to be a feedback. So if the person, so I would say no, because if they're shining the light, and there's obviously the physical response, that's the physical, is the pupil dilation. They are saying that there has to be a feedback between the basic visual perception, like the size and color and all that, like I said, and then the higher order visual system, like the processing part of it, and then feeding it back.
What's interesting is that you can see validity to both of these, because there is certain aspects where you tend to only use certain regions of your brain for certain tasks, and you are conscious for that. But it almost is like it all works together while also working singularly.
Yep.
Keep going. Remember that. That's a surprise tool that'll help us later.
Okay.
Let me say that again. It's almost like both of these theories have some validity to them, where everything works together as a whole globally in the brain, and then certain things are compartmentalized as well. Remember this.
Yep.
Anyway, keep going.
So the next one is higher order theories. So higher order theories have been around for a lot longer in philosophical debates.
Good old philosophers.
Oh, yeah. But it's actually only more recently that scientists have tried to test them with experiments. So these theories suggest that for a mental state to be conscious, it is not enough to just have that state. You also need to be aware of it. So that in and of itself tells me that they're not defining consciousness as awareness. They're two separate things.
So it's metacognition, awareness of awareness.
I believe so.
Yeah. That's cool, because that fits in with the Rene Descartes, I think, therefore I am, which is cliche, like normal, what you would expect for a philosopher to come to the conclusion of. It's not just awareness and being able to react, but it's awareness of your awareness. Which then... that begs the question, that are animals conscious? And by this theory, it wouldn't be then, because they don't typically show signs of metacognition, but just cognition. Yes? Would you agree? I don't have the notes in front of me. I'm just saying.
Well, I don't have notes on that specifically about animal cognition.
Well, like based off of the theory, at least, would that make sense, do you think?
That would.
Yeah. So, but then that's cool, because then we have to ask the question, are animals conscious? Like what defines
You're
consciousness?
You're going to really like the later one then.
Oh boy. Oh boy. But yeah, that's really all I have to add to that. Is I think it brings up what we define as conscious, because I mean, we could go down to like ants, right?
Yes.
Or like microbes, because they respond to stimuli and they have like reactions. They're a living organism.
Like bacteria, even.
Right. But is that conscious? Are parasites conscious? Are ants conscious? Are wasps conscious? Are dogs conscious? Where do we draw the line? Because there is a certain point where it's like, nobody cares if well, maybe there's some people. Most 90% of the population is not going to care if I step on an ant and accidentally kill it.
Yeah.
But most of the population would care if I step on a dog and accidentally kill it.
Yeah.
So it's like, is this value that we attribute to these things, does it correlate to the consciousness levels? Is that how we're attributing? Because people argue that trees can even communicate with each other, and trees respond to their environment to some degree.
If you talk nice to a plant, it'll actually grow better and healthier and faster, I think.
Yeah, so do we define...
Play nice music to it.
Yeah, versus saying negative things,
Yeah.
it'll wilt a bit more. There's studies on this, and that's very interesting too. It's like the words and the speech have power, and it affects these things that might not even technically be conscious, depending on how we define consciousness.
Yep.
So I think that's another question too, and I don't have the answer, and I don't think anyone has the answer, but it's like, where do we draw the line on consciousness? Is it just this is conscious and this is not, or is it a spectrum where it's different tiers?
To counteract that, I would ask you're asking do animals have consciousness? What if animals are all just acting on instinct alone and they don't have anything?
Yeah, that's certainly
They're
possible too.
Like bees. Bees make honey and, they spread pollen. Do they know why they're doing that? Do they know how they are doing that, or that they just do it?
Insects are very interesting because it's usually centralized to the queen. For ants, wasps, and bees from the Hymenoptera order. I was an etymology nerd for a little while. I keep bees, and I'm very fascinated by by this the Hymenoptera order of bees, wasps, and ants.
Yep.
But they specifically are actually very centralized around their queen, and so. There's a lot of, it's been a while since I've researched this, so maybe research has changed or maybe I'm remembering wrong, so take it with a grain of salt. I have no notes in front of me. But there is a lot of different theories as to does the queen communicate telepathically with her workers? Or is it just pheromone based or what? Because there's the thing, if you kill an ant, all the other ants around will go into an attack frenzy because they smell the pheromones of the dead ant and they know something's wrong.
Or if you attack a bee...
Yeah, but then there's
I heard that if you attack a bee, other bees come.
Yeah, and then there's weird stuff too where moving beehives, if you move it within a mile or two of where the original hive was, the bees can never find it. They'll just go back to where the original hive was and not be able to sort it out. Versus if you move it 10 miles away, they can find the new hive and get to it and figure out where it is.
That's interesting.
And so you have to wonder how much of this is just pheromone based versus any kind of electro-telepathic communication. I'm sure there's a lot of theories on that. I'm not an etymology expert, but that was an interesting rabbit hole I went down for a while in general. So, also fun fact, only the female wasps, bees, and ants can sting you. Yes, ants sting more than bite. But it's a modification of the ovulation tube that would be used for the queen to lay eggs, since they were not selected to lay eggs. So the males bite, females sting. Anyway, back to consciousness here. We need to take a break in a minute, so we'll hit one more theory.
Well, no, I'm going to keep going with this one because I had more.
Oh, sorry, you had more. My bad. It's my bad.
This is my episode. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, jeez.
I'm just kidding.
Mrs. Queen Madison.
Mrs. Queen. I need that on a shirt.
Her Royal Majesty, the Mrs. Madison.
Mrs. Queen, you. All right, so... Yeah, so like I said, it's not enough that you have the state, it's that you have to be aware of it. So you have the first order perception, and then you have the higher order representation that monitors or is aware of that perception. So I do have an example. So just seeing a red apple isn't enough to be consciously aware of it, but you become conscious of the apple when your brain forms a higher order thought, like I am seeing a red apple.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It adds an extra layer of depth to it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yep.
Anything else on this one?
That's it.
Oh, that was it? Okay.
That was it.
I'm sorry.
Now you can talk about your bee stings and ant stings.
I don't need to talk about them. We're at break time.
Yep.
All right. Well, sorry for derailing you for etymology on a psychology episode, but you're here for science. Science. So that's what you're going to get. We'll be right back in just a minute. The colony is abuzz with references for Mrs. Queen Madison here on Musings on Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix.
I seriously need that on a shirt that just says Mrs. Queen.
Mrs. Queen Bee.
Mrs. Queen Bee.
It fits for the theme of the episode here since queens are of such significance. All right, so you said you got 4 more consciousness theories for us, so let's hit them.
Yeah. So, all right, the next one is integrated information theory. So most theories start with the physical brain and try to explain how it produces consciousness. So they try to take the physical and explain the non-physical. Integrated information theory starts with consciousness itself and asks what are the essential properties of any experience and how can we account for those properties in terms of a physical system. So it's looking at consciousness first and then going to the physical.
Okay, different starting point then.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So every experience has 5 properties: intrinsic, information, integration, exclusion, and composition. And then a physical system to support these properties must possess cause-effect power, specific causal distinctions, irreducibility, one unified structure at a time, and a network of internal distinctions and connections. So the final product is actually a mathematical structure that is a phi structure. And that's the detailed map of the system's cause-effect network. So this one actually includes a mathematical structure to it.
That's interesting, trying to reduce consciousness to a mathematical framework. Yeah. I would be curious to see what the math actually is on that.
I have an example.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, we'll see how I can do with it on the fly here.
I don't have the specific math to it, but there is an example to it. So, during wakefulness, the cortex supports complex integrated interactions. So that's high phi. So consciousness could be localized there. But non-REM sleep causes the system to fragment, which is low phi, leading to unconsciousness, even if the neurons are still firing.
So this is almost like brainwaves.
Almost, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. So, I mean, is there a specific formula for phi or anything, or?
I do not have it on hand, but I can look.
No, it's fine. You can say something else about the theory. I will look up.
That's all I had about the theory.
Okay.
Say something smart.
You say something smart. I'm looking up the math.
This whole episode is me saying something smart. It's your turn.
Fish have fins.
And
in honor of our missing fish nerd race.
And kills.
Yeah. Sometimes. Well, because dolphins and whales don't, but they're not technically fit. Anyway,
they're mammals. Did you find it yet?
I'm just perusing the AI summary on Google.
Okay.
It doesn't look like there's really a mathematical formula. It's just more of a... I think it's basically just how you're able to integrate information within a system. So I don't know if this would actually be integrated into a specific mathematical formula or not. I don't know.
I mean, my source said it, so let me look. It just says that the mathematical framework is phi. Is in terms of a value called phi.
I mean, phi is a specific number in mathematics. It's like 1.61 or whatever.
I don't know how to read that, but phi equals min bipartitions distance, in parentheses, whole cause-effect structure, comma, disconnected structure. So I have a slight mathematical formula. I don't know how true it is. So bipartitions involve cutting the system in 2 parts. The distance measures how different the full system's cause-effect structure is from the version where the parts are disconnected. And then the minimum distance across all bipartitions is taken as the value of phi.
So I think it's just measuring different movements of of
signals.
thoughts and neurotransmissions across like a specific distance within a specific time, and then quantifying that and seeing whether it falls into hi-fi or lo-fi. That's my understanding of this on the fly here.
Yeah. I don't know what the threshold is to determine if it's high or lo-fi, but that was the formula I found.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we can move on. I don't
Yeah.
think I have much else to add to this at this point, but that was interesting.
Yeah. So that's the only theory that I saw that had a mathematical look to it. So next one.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
All right. Predictive processing. This is more of a general theory of brain and mind functioning. So it's not specifically for our consciousness, but it relates to it. So it explains in terms of prediction error minimization and how this process contributes to different properties of consciousness. So the brain has a goal to make the best guess about the world using both prior knowledge and current sensory data. It constantly tries to minimize the difference between its expectations about sensory inputs and the actual sensory signals it receives.
I mean, this is Myers-Briggs in a nutshell.
How?
Because Myers-Briggs is centered around sensory input, so introverted sense. This will be in depth for those that are not familiar. I apologize. I'll have to break this down in an actual episode at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But like introverted sensing is directed more towards the past, and so introverted sensing is focused on using past sensory experiences to learn and predict the future. And extroverted sensing is focused more on present experiences and needing to go out and build present experiences to build frameworks to understand future experiences.
It's like conditioning.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's like what both are.
I get what
basically.
I get what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like personality theory here kind of starts to play in a little bit too, and then you have your judging functions to make decisions on that perception.
Yeah,
and that's where the extroverted and introverted thinking and feeling come into play. But that's basically Myers-Briggs sensing and intuition is not in a nutshell is basically perceiving something either in the present or past, and then using intuition to predict it in the future with either introverted or extroverted intuition.
Yep.
And that's your kind of like your IQ, for lack of better words, in a sense. Is like your ability to predict and see patterns in the future and recognize patterns and things.
Yeah.
So, anywho, what else do you have? My psychology nerd is showing.
No, it's good. It's good though. You're adding a lot of good things to this.
Yeah, it's a whole psych fact episode. It's something I could actually talk off of the hip on.
Fish have gills. Fish have fins. All right.
The Finns fought the British.
Okay. So if there is a mismatch called a prediction error, the brain updates its predictions or adjusts its actions to resolve the error. So this process is also called active inference. When the brain performs actions to influence its sensory inputs to match predictions. So predictions flow from higher level systems to lower level sensory systems, whereas errors flow in the opposite direction.
And then we can relate this to Pavlov's functions of like extinction of behaviors, where you do a behavior and you no longer get the reward you're expecting for said behavior. And so it creates that error pattern, and then it leads to extinction. And then we can get into shoot-offs of that, where there's that spontaneous reemergence of the Pavlovian behavior, even after it's been extinct and negated for a while, because you just kind of default back to it every once in a while.
I'm talking about the experiment ringing the bell and the dogs.
Yeah, like the conditioning and all of that. And then like when you have the extinction of the conditioning, you kind of learn, okay, I'm not getting the reward here anymore of like food to this bell sound, but you'll still like, after you have learned that, you'll still have kind of like a flashback that'll often appear. That's why you'll like be like, hey, this light switch doesn't work anymore, and you'll learn that. And then like just some random day, you'll still try to flick the light switch, and it's like, I knew this didn't work. Why did I do that? Well,
because memory is also part of consciousness. So there's that too. Anyways, here's the fun one.
Oh, boy.
Or do you want to take a break?
No, we're good. We can do another one or two.
Well, I only have two more, and this is how long the last one is.
Let's just power through, knock these last two out. We'll take a break and then do quantum consciousness.
Okay. So here's the fun one. Panpsychism is the belief that all things have consciousness. So consciousness isn't viewed as awareness, but rather the capacity for subjective experience. So aka the fundamental feature of reality. So human consciousness isn't different from other entities except the level of complexity. Anything to add?
So an ant has an experience
Yes.
of me crushing it.
Yes.
And so therefore it's conscious.
It feels pain. It has experience of that. It has the fear.
I mean,
Rocks have consciousness. Plants have consciousness. Everything. Bicycles.
I feel like this comes down to semantics at a certain point and like how you're defining consciousness.
Well, they're defining it as not awareness.
Because, I mean, if you define consciousness as basically experience, then yeah, most things would be conscious. But I feel like consciousness isn't just having an experience. It's like having metacognition about it. And so that's where I lean more on the philosophical side for me personally. But hey,
I would agree.
If you disagree, email us at m.quad.musings@gmail.com. We want to know which theory you adhere to.
I would agree with consciousness. It's not just having an experience. It's having the awareness of that experience. So I would define it as awareness. So I would not be part of this theory. I would not support it. But
this is more of the nature is one hippie
It
theory, which
is.
to each their own. But.
That we are all one collective being. That sort of thing.
Yeah, this would really play into that the whole universe is one.
Yeah. But anyways, so
it reminds me of that joke about the Dalai Lama, and he goes to a Subway shop in New York, and they're like, "What do you want?" And he says, "Make me one with everything." Sorry, last theory. Go ahead.
No, I'm not done with this one.
Oh, you're not done? Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope. Anyways, so human consciousness is not different. So just the level of complexity. So the only difference between each, I'll say entity, because they're defining entity as anything on Earth as physical.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, particles, they have rudimentary forms of consciousness or basic awareness, but humans have higher levels of consciousness. So there's like a spectrum to it, but they're saying that at the heart of it, everything does have a consciousness.
Huh.
There's just a different level to it.
Again, this might be a surprise tool that's going to help us later here.
But so one thing with this, why I find it so funny, is that it's not falsifiable.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's why I find it so funny. Like, you can't falsify that a blade of grass has consciousness.
It's like radiometric dating. Oh, wait, I just said that on air. Whoops. Ooh, I'm going to make some people really mad.
Nah, it's not fine.
Making something falsifiable by its own systems is not scientific falsifiability. I'm sorry. I just crushed like a whole bunch of people's souls out there, and I'm going to get a whole bunch of mad, like hateful ad hominem emails at m.quad.musings@gmail.com. We will leave you anonymous, but laugh at you on the show if you send me troll emails. Anyway, go ahead. Or did you have more on this one? More on this one still?
I had one more sentence.
Oh, sorry. You said that there was one short one. I thought this one was the short one.
This is... No.
Oh, okay. All right. This is the funny one. The next one's the short one.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I will.
We're almost done, I promise.
I need to be quiet and just let you do your thing.
It's okay. You're adding a lot of good information. But the last thing I was going to say about this is, again, with falsifiability, there's no experiment that could definitively test whether inanimate objects have some form of consciousness, like rocks. I mean, I don't know how to do that. I don't think any scientist knows how to do that.
They have to quantify their own theory a bit more before that would even be possible, I think.
That's why it's a theory.
This is interesting, though. I wonder how this plays into the Jesus saying that the rocks cry out, and then our myth with Ninurta talking about how the rocks were warriors against the people of Mesopotamia. And so, yeah, you can quantify that as just volcanic eruptions, but how much of that is like trying to convey this idea that there is a level of consciousness in at least the worldviews that are being presented here in the entities that are present.
That's actually a really good point. That's really interesting. See, you're adding good things.
Because then there's a theory too that like everything emits a frequency, and so that the rocks crying out, that they actually probably would cry out, just like because every single materialistic object emits some type of like frequency or something like that.
Is that a theory, or has that been proven? Because I've seen
connecting?
a lot of things with that. I don't know if that's been proven.
It might be proven. I don't know.
I think it is proven.
Fact check me on that, someone. Not you. Someone else in the audience.
Yeah, it's not going to be me.
I want more listener interaction. Email me more. m.co.musings@gmail.com. Let me know what you find. Last theory, or do you have more to add on this one?
I have one more.
You said you had one more. Oh, yeah. Okay,
theory.
Okay. I think you said you had one more sentence.
No, I said my last one.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Last theory.
And this one isn't really even a theory. It's just the lack of theory. So some people actually think consciousness is an illusion itself, that there is no consciousness.
The Mythical Matrix is referring to an actual matrix.
Yes. So this one is where people claim that consciousness itself is an illusion, that their subjective experience of being aware is not real at all, but it's actually a constructed perception. Basically Matrix style.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because even Matrix style fits that dualist mentality where you plug in somewhere in another form to be able to interact. And it's not exactly like a spirit because it's a physical body, but there still is some essence to that almost. But
I don't think consciousness is an illusion, but I think it's interesting that people believe that.
That's more like Hinduistic almost in a sense. Not quite, but like kind of like the I'm not familiar enough with Hinduist like religion and all of that, so I might be misspeaking here, so forgive me if I am, but that's like kind of like the, everything is an illusion and nothing really matters, and ascending is kind of the only thing that matters. And that's kind of like maybe this idea here that then bleeds into like that panpsychism, that like everything has consciousness and you're trying to ascend to that ultimate higher consciousness. But I don't know. I think that's a good way to close out the theories here. We'll be back in a minute with quantum consciousness and any final thoughts on this overall, and then close out the episode. So stay tuned and we will return in just a moment. And we have returned from the quantum plane here on Musings on Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix to talk a little bit more about consciousness to you here. So I think you wanted to add something else real quick to what we just covered, and then I will jump into quantum consciousness theory.
Well, you mentioned Hinduist views on consciousness, and I looked it up. It said consciousness is not considered an illusion, but the individual ego or sense of separate self is viewed as the illusion.
Right. And so that kind of bleeds into what I was saying, where it's like it's sort of an illusion, but sort of panpsychism almost as well, where you're trying to ascend to that higher original consciousness instead of, and it's an illusion that you are a separate entity and you're more connected than you realize.
Yeah, that you are one with the universe.
Yeah. And so,
then it's not ascensionism, it's enlightenment instead, but you were pretty much spot on.
Yeah.
Like with general principle. Yeah.
Right. I will take it.
I'm done.
Yeah, it's my turn now. Quantum consciousness. Now I got to try to jot down notes on timestamps while we're recording here again, and I'm talking, so that's always a juggling act. Let's actually not do quantum consciousness quite yet. Let's do what is the fourth dimension, because we were going to talk about that a little bit, and we didn't ever really clarify that. So, I mean, for those of you that have been listening since the first episode, you kind of know, but you were asking me questions, so like I kind of was realizing you didn't fully understand what I meant by the fourth dimension, and so I want to clarify this here.
Well, everything that I was seeing was referring to the fourth dimension as just time.
Right.
And I know that's not what you were explaining, so that's why I was getting a little confused.
It is true that the fourth dimension can be time in physics. And this is where it gets weird, because there's physical fourth dimension, like physics fourth dimension, and then there's the geometric fourth dimension. So why we have a time can be represented as a dimension in physics, and why it is represented as such is because it allows us to be able to take derivatives and integrals, and so it gives us what's called delta t, the change in time. And that allows us to be able to quantify like the changes of time in relation to like velocity or acceleration or things like that.
Isn't this where we get string theory and all of that from too?
I don't know.
With time?
I don't know enough about string theory that's real deep quantum physics stuff there. That's beyond my level. I have more of a surface level understanding.
Email us at
Yeah, there you go. m.quantummusings@gmail.com. Feel like quoting Natasha from the Avengers Endgames. Like, do either of you understand like the time travel or anything? Only enough to make conversation. It's like, yeah, that's my understanding of quantum physics here. But no, so by fourth dimension, what I mean and what we always mean on the show here, unless we clarify otherwise, is I mean the geometric fourth dimension.
Yeah.
So it's another plane of space that exists within the reality we're in right now that we're not able to perceive. And that's where our spirit is plugged into with our body and moving along with us. And then when the body dies, the spirit gets unplugged, and then the spirit is able to go about, depending on your belief systems, whether you're more agnostic or that God is far removed. You might believe the spirit wanders around and that's why houses are haunted, or you might adhere more to like a Christian worldview that to be absent from the body is to be present from the to be absent from the body is to be present with Lord. Yeah, I said that right. I don't know why I psyched myself out. But yeah, so there's a lot of different theories you can spin on that. So when we're talking fourth dimension, I always mean geometric fourth dimension. So it's just another dimension that exists into space. And this is like I think it's what it's called, Euclidean geometry. And it's like that, the tesseract shapes and all these other weird shapes. And then like you see some things like sacred geometry will kind of bleed into this a little bit sometimes, depending on what specifically we're talking about. So, but yeah, that's kind of like the little, in a nutshell, what is the fourth dimension down and dirty for you. So now that we have that kind of defined, we're going to talk about the quantum consciousness theory. So let's see, pull up my notes here. All right, so the core theory, it comes from Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, and it's a physicist and an anesthesiologist teamed up for this theory. So it's going to be good right off the bat. The only other thing I think they're missing is to throw in a philosopher, and it would really be a good shebang of collection of very interesting, unique minds to add to it all. But no, it's still a good theory. So they theorize, from your definition, it sounds a little bit more materialist, but I could see this also not being materialist. I could see this kind of superseding materialism into like the fourth dimension angle. And this is where I still sit. And I think a lot of the other theories feed into this. But their premise is that consciousness doesn't just emerge from firing neurons, it emerges from quantum activity inside of microtubules. So microtubules is like the tubes on the cellular level that are inside of the neurons. So we're talking, very microscopic, minuscule quantum level that things are going on here. So it's basically just tiny protein structures within the neurons. So
Are you referring to the chemical?
This is more than just chemicals. It's microtubules.
Or electrical or what?
It's just like pathways that cells use to communicate. That's what microtubules are. So we're talking cellular level of consciousness here, but it's unified. It's not individual. So the theory is that these microtubes can support quantum coherence. So they kind of like, I might not be explaining this the best. I might be slightly off of my definition here, but they kind of like sync up and they make like wavelight stakes, like these electrons. They kind of fluctuate and they kind of get into this wave state, and they, instead of just kind of firing individually, they kind of do like imagine the sine or cosine functions from your math classes. They kind of like sync up into a pattern with each other, and so they communicate with each other. And this is happening on a very microscopic level. And so like the argument here with quantum coherence, so like particles sync across space and time, enabling complex computation. And so this is that quantum entanglement idea where I was talking with you earlier a couple of weeks back, where they found that two particles could get quantumly entangled, be separated across time and space, and that they could poke one and that it was instantly registered with, instantly. It was immediate. Like the other one responded to it. Like no delay. I think like instant, like faster than speed of light, like same second reacted.
Wow.
And so, and I mentioned to you that this almost kind of indicates that there's like...
Is that a proposition, or has that been tested? Or
I believe that's been proven. That they actually did a specific scientific experiment to prove quantum entanglement. That's my understanding of it. I don't have the study in front of me right now to cite it. Right. So I want to clarify that I may be mistaken. You can fact check me there. But this is where it gets interesting, because this is where I mentioned to you, this almost literally indicates that there's an extra, like you have an ability to almost fold time, or not time, but just like reality itself. And that kind
like
of almost
imagine a piece of paper.
Right. But that like almost proves that there's an extra dimension that exists, because two things that are able to not seemingly touch, but that react as if they're entangled, that almost indicates that there is another aspect of reality that exists that we're just not able to comprehend, and they're communicating through that aspect of reality instantaneously. Anyway, that would be how I read it. Maybe there's other quantum physics theorists out there that have ideas on that. So I'll leave that up to the audience to email me and tell me how wrong I am, because people have not told me I'm wrong very recently on email. So, but this gives the idea of like a brain level quantum computer, and it's constantly updating its awareness and getting rid of old information and old connections it doesn't need, and renewing new ones so that everything is able to function appropriately. And this really builds into that entanglement principle. And so that entangled microtubules in different neurons create a unified consciousness state. And this solves what's called the binding problem, and how brain functions feel like one experience. So like you're able to feel like everything around you is like one instantaneous or near instantaneous experience, and it's not just seated in your eyes, like compartmentalized.
Yep. Well, because your brain, almost every experience that you have uses multiple parts of the brain.
Right. And this kind of
it's not just one thing.
And this solves it with that quantum entanglement, where it kind of lets those things, you can experience it just isolated.
Yeah.
But you can also experience it collectively at the same time because of quantum entanglement. So things can light up multiple areas without having to directly communicate because of quantum entanglement. And this is where I was saying it's a surprise tool. It's going to help us later, because it's kind of both, where it's like the brain works as one, and then it's also individual experiences, that exist. And this very much speaks to the quantum realm, where multiple things that seem contradictory can like exist almost, in a sense, where it's like Schrodinger's cat. It's both dead and alive until you observe it. And so these things can like kind of like exist in multiple different states in the mind, at least in theory. This is what this is saying to me. And again, these are thoughts on the fly. I have not prepped a lot of this in advance to connect this to other theories. So you as a listener are probably spotting holes in it, and email me about that.
I'm trying to look up like vague information of it, and it's taking in like thermodynamics, statistical physics, entropy, energy, pressure, physical aspects of an object. So yeah, it's taking in a lot of stuff.
And then they found out that, and so they've actually done stuff to try to quantify this and to falsify it. And this is where it gets really cool, is that they found that they've used anesthesia to try to pinpoint where exactly consciousness sits. And their theory is that the anesthetic shut down consciousness by disrupting the quantum processes in the microtubules. And there's been numerous experiments on this over the last decade. But the most recent one that I saw that we've already talked about on the show is that they used microtubule stabilizers in rats in one of their control groups, and the other one didn't have it. And they applied anesthesia to both, and they found that the microtubule stabilizer group, it took longer for the anesthesia to take effect and to shut down consciousness. So that indicates that there is something to the microtubule level, and not just the neurons, but it's the actual microtubules in the neurons that has the seat of consciousness, because that stabilizing that delayed the onset of unconsciousness. And so that was really cool. That's why I was nerding out that episode 28 or whatever with Isaiah talking about, it was later, whatever that episode was with Isaiah talking about quantum consciousness. So, I mean, there's a couple objections here. I mean, the first thing that came to my mind when I was kind of exploring this was like, what if you have a limb that's amputated then? Because if you're arguing quantum entanglement, then...
I have an idea for that one.
Oh, okay. But like if you're arguing quantum entanglement, then you should be able to still technically control your limb if it's amputated because of quantum entanglement. And so, but then like I was digging into it a little bit more, and it builds off of the constantly updating the quantum entanglement and the oscillations. And so disconnecting is like unplugging from a quantum computer, basically. But I see you have...
I may have an explanation for that, actually.
You're excited. Go ahead.
Have you ever heard of phantom limb syndrome?
That was actually the very next thing on my point to talk about. But yeah, go ahead.
So like if your limb gets amputated, some people actually still feel their limb attached to them, and they still feel like they're controlling it. Like there's some people that have the sensation, like if their arm, like say from the top of the elbow, like right above the elbow, down is amputated. They still feel like they are controlling the lower half of their arm, bending their fingers, like they still feel that. Like that it's still attached to them. So that's actually really cool.
Yeah, because it like maps it out in the mind basically that, hey, like I have these limbs and everything. And then that's where that phantom limb pain kind of comes from, is it remembers the pain. And so it's kind of like that that quantum connection almost.
Yeah, because I mean, if they're disconnected then and you're still feeling that, that's really cool, because then that takes the microtubules or whatever from the limb that was amputated.
You're feeling the absence of the microtubules.
Yeah.
That's, and that
actually makes sense.
It does make sense. But this is kind of like a bunch of your theories in one here, you know, where it kind of is dualism almost in a sense, because it indicates there's something in a higher dimension, but it plays into that M-Quad's insights into the fourth dimension where it's the spiritual, but we can quantify the spiritual with science, just not our current level of science. And so we have this level of consciousness that exists that's both dualist and sort of materialist all in one.
Would you say it's partially materialist just because it lies in the microtubules?
No, I mean, I would say maybe it's materialist because it is a quantum process, and quantum processes are materialistic, but I think that spiritual plays into the quantum realm and this extra dimension that we just can't interact with. And so even that is material. It's just not material in the way that we understand yet. Right. And that's where I would say dualism and materialism, it may just be two sides of the same coin because of our current level of understanding.
I'm kind of geeking out over here about the phantom limb, because that makes a lot of sense. And I've known about that for a while, but I've never known why. Yeah. And that's actually really cool. I'm going to dig into that more.
Yeah,
actually.
I know that because I learned about some of that in some of my psychology stuff, that there's an actual region of your brain that maps the limbs out. And that's kind of like why to a sense, but it does fit the quantum theory as well. But to tie this up into a little bit better of a knot here, I think that this fits the global workspace theory a bit, because it's all connected. You know, consciousness is in not just the mind, not just in the eyes, but it's in the entire body, wherever you have your microtubules at, in like the neural pathways. That's where it exists. And then
I don't know if that theory was talking about everywhere in the body. From my understanding, it was just everywhere in the brain. But
yes, it
might
is
be
everywhere
that.
in the brain. But this is kind of building off of it even. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It fits the recurrent processing theory, where it's also can be very localized because of quantum entanglement. It fits that really deep philosophical framework of like metacognition and being aware that you're thinking. It fits almost that panpsychism a little bit, I think, to a very small degree. But ultimately, it challenges that idea of emergent illusion, because if this is true, it's a real quantum level process, not just like something that you imagine.
Right.
So.
Not an illusion.
Yeah. That's all I got. Do you have anything else that you're wanting to add?
No, I mean, I think we covered all the theories that I had. There may be more out there that I haven't seen, so I'm sure there are more. That I don't know of, but yeah, if you find more, email.
Email us at m.quad.musings@gmail.com. We love to hear from the listeners. I regularly interact with listeners about various subjects that we talk about and dive into on the show, because I want to build a community around this and not just, my ramblings on the show.
It's not a lecture.
It's not a lecture. It's an ongoing quantum conversation where you can always transcend time by emailing us at m.quad.musings@gmail.com. We ask that you take a minute to share the podcast with someone. If you're enjoying this and you know someone else that might want to be a part of the Quad Squad, let them know that we exist, because if they don't know about us, then how can they join our groups and join the Quad Squad? We want to include everybody that is a seeker of truth. Buy us a cup of coffee link is going to be in the show notes if you want to support the show and fund the research, fund the efforts here. Anything that you're able to do is welcome, but no pressure at all. $25 donation or more will get you mentioned as a producer for the upcoming show once I see it. Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube handles are all m.quad.musings. Facebook, Musings on Mysteries in the Mythical Matrix. Website is mquadmusings.com, so no periods, just all mquadmusings.com. we ask that you, again, consider emailing us if you have any insights, anything that we missed, anything that you want us to talk about. You can email us or you can join the Discord. Discord server invite will be in the show notes. If it expires, because it expires like every 10 days, just email me and I'll update it and send you a new one so you can join the Discord server and connect with like-minded seekers of truth. But send us your confessions, concessions, contentions, whatever you liked about the show, whatever you don't like about the show. And whether you've been listening on the earth with the mortals, in the stars of heaven, with Enoch and the cherubim, or
down in Sheol,
we thank you for quantumly transcending time to join us for this epic psychology discovery. And we hope you have a good rest of your night.
consciousness.
The debated illusion.